Okay, good morning, members. Just a reminder that this meeting will be recorded and available for viewing on YouTube. Members, due to the sudden and sad loss of Mr. Heggie, our area chair, we require to appoint a chair for the meeting. So please can I invite you to nominate a chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Lottie Fraser to chair the meeting.
And I'm very happy to second that.
Thank you. I'm willing to accept under the circumstances, the sad circumstances. Okay, before we actually start business, I have a statement to read out in relation to the loss of our Councillor Heggie. Members, it is a very heavy heart, but I have today taken the chair. We are at one with the community in Nairnshire, being in shock at the tragic loss of our colleague and area leader, Councillor Tom Heggie. Our loss is great, however, our thoughts are with Tom's wife Mary and the rest of the family at this most difficult time. Almost 2 weeks on from learning of the news of his death, fellow Nairnshire members, Councillors Liz MacDonald, Peter Saggers and I remain shocked and saddened over the loss of our dear friend and colleague Tom Heggie, who was laid to rest on Saturday. Tom was a man who demonstrated sincere care for his local community and those within it. Tom's eloquence and skills in communicating the strength and showing empathy for all those who came into contact will be hugely missed. We know from Tom's career, but he thrived on communicating with people and being positive even in the face of challenging circumstances. I'm sure I speak for all my colleagues in expressing our admiration for his skills as a communicator and someone who could inspire people to achieve. In his role as a councillor within Nairnshire, Tom had a particularly strong connection with those who were underprivileged and recognising that they had the greatest need. In summary, Tom fulfilled his role as a local councillor with great pride and integrity. In my role as Provost, I particularly noted Tom's comments, commitment and care, which meant that he was much more embedded within the Nairn community, which were representation on several organisations, including Nairn Sports Club, Nairn Allotment Society, Nairn Community and Arts, and the Highland Community Justice Partnership. His commitment to supporting people shone through his illustrious career, both in teaching and in the ministry. Tom, having worked in Nairn Academy, Forres Academy, Glasgow and Nairn Old Parish Church and Nairn United Reformed Church. I have no doubt that his care and tireless effort for the good and benefit of Nairnshire will be fondly remembered by many within our community for years to come. Tom will be sorely missed by his family, friends, but also by his colleagues who held him in such high regard, both locally and across the Highland Council. We send our deepest sympathies and condolences to Tom's family as they come to terms with their loss. I now ask for a minute's silence in memory of Tom. Okay, thank you very much. Shall we now continue with business? Could I have, there's no apologies for absence. Can I go straight to declarations of interest?
Yes, Chair. Mr. Saggers has a connection to item 5 as the Council's appointee as the Director of Nairn Bid. However, having applied the objective test, he does not consider that he has an interest to declare. This is because he has had no involvement with applications made for funding from the ward's place-based investment fund, and he has requested that this statement be recorded in the minutes. And Mr. Saggers also has a declaration in respect of item 6 as a Director of Nairn River Enterprise Limited, Greenhive, and he will leave and not take part in this item.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll go on to item 3, which is the housing revenue account, and this is for garage rents. And I believe, Lewis, do you want to speak to this, or have we got somebody from housing? Oh,
Jake Mitchell's
Jake, you're going to take it. Sorry, go on.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The report before you provides information on Nairnshire garage rent and invites you to set rent levels for next year. The first two tables on your report at 5.1 and 5.3 set out the current position with garages. We consulted on with our tenants on the general council house rent increase, and that was based on options for a 1% or a 1.5% increase. And we've mirrored that in the two tables at 6.2, which show the impact of the 1% and the 1.5% increase. Happy to take any questions.
Any members got questions? No? No? Well, in that case, I think it's just noted or committees invited to agree the level of rent increase to apply to Nairnshire garages and garage sites. Are we agreed? Peter? You're mute, Peter. Sorry, you're mute. Peter, you're mute. You're mute. Sorry.
So we are agreeing the 1% increase. Is that what you're proposing, Jake?
Yeah, it's the paper sets out a 1 or a 1.5.
Yeah.
One would mirror the general council house rent increase, Councillor Saggers.
I would be happy with a 1.5% increase, bearing in mind that inflation is undoubtedly going to increase the maintenance costs. I understand that these are not very great in any circumstances, but I do think we need to make provision for the fact that costs generally are increasing, and 1.5% seems to be more reasonable than 1%.
Councillor MacDonald, your views?
Yes, I'm happy with that. We're only talking about pennies per.
We are.
Anyway, so yeah, I'm happy to go with 1.5. I don't think 2 pence here or there is going to make a big difference to people.
Yeah, lower case is threepence and the higher one is 55, 65, 22 pence, is it? So no, I'm happy 1.5%. We're all agreed on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Area Roads Capital Programme. Who's Richard? I believe you're there. You used to talk to that one.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, so here we have the annual Roads Capital Programme for Nairnshire for 2022-23 for members' approval. So the report itself is self-explanatory, explaining how the priorities are arrived at and the amount of capital that's available this year. At the time of writing the report and the current time, it's based on last year's capital availability, which it's looking clear that it'll be virtually the same for this year coming. And yes, Appendix 2 outlines those priorities, which we'll address in that order. So it includes a full surface dressing programme this year, and which is primarily on the B1991 and various C roads in the county, plus an edge strengthening programme of £100,000, which is primarily on the B1991 and the B9007, particularly there at Airdrie Mill, where we've been having problems. And usual patching programme and jet patcher programme as well. And so that's all set out there in Appendix 2. And in addition, in row 19 was just to draw your attention to that we'll be anticipating some access to strategic funding as well, approved by our colleagues at HQ, which will help us address some of the patching requirements on the A939 again. Having done some last year, we'll then be able to proceed from Little Mill back towards the town this year, is the plan. So that's really summarises everything, and open to questions from members.
Okay. Any members got questions? Councillor Saggers, I see you looking there.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I'm pleased to see the money set aside for strengthening the edges of roads. This is a major problem where heavy lorries are forced to use or move off the main carriageway, and it does do a lot of damage. And then the ground which has been damaged is then worn away by rain or whatever, and you soon get big ruts by the side of the road, which are potentially very dangerous to motorists if they get their wheels stuck in these. So yeah, that's a positive move there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I think it's just a case of, is it note the report?
Yeah, just to approve
That's to
the programme.
to
Thank
approve
you,
the
Chairman.
report. Yep, approved. All happy with that? Okay. Now it's Nairnshire repurposing COVID-19 fund and place-based investment fund proposals. Lewis, are you taking us through this one, or?
Yes, that's
Straight
myself,
off the
Chair.
paper, right?
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. So this report outlines proposals for the allocation of ward-based funds, both COVID-19 funding and also our ward place-based investment funds. It was agreed at a meeting of the Highland Council on 7th of January 21 that wards with any unspent COVID-19 funds could decide to spend this on projects to assist children and adults post-COVID. And the report contains some proposals to repurpose some COVID-19 funding to support amenity services to improvements in play parks. Committee previously identified a range of opportunities for spend against our place-based investment fund for the ward under the auspices of the community partnership on the 15th September. And this report now revisits that and asks committee to agree budget allocations outlined against those remaining place-based investment fund budget. Members, just to point out at Appendix 1, there is a letter of support from the chair of the community partnership in regards to the projects that are outlined in this report. The report contains two recommendations for consideration. Members, the first one is to agree the repurposing of £3,200 from the ward COVID-19 fund to support amenity services with repairs and improvements to the Birch Road play area in Nairn. And the second one is to consider and agree the proposed allocations of the ward's remaining balance of £65,000 place-based investment funds in line with those community planning recommendations, community partnership recommendations, sorry. And those recommendations are within three headings in line with the previous report which went to committee in September. Those are accessibility projects, improving health and wellbeing outcomes in the ward, improving local infrastructure to stimulate economic growth. In that first heading of accessibility projects, there's a proposal to allocate £10,000 to the Nairn Access Panel Link Speech project. Within improving health and wellbeing outcomes, there's three projects there. It's proposed to allocate £9,000 to health and wellbeing outcomes in Nairnshire schools, with that amount being equally divided amongst them. £2,000 to the listening benches in Nairn Links, and that's a project that's been led by Mikey's Line. And also £1,000 to the Nairn Community Drop-In Hub, which is an NHS-led project. The proposals are, the remainder of the funding is to improve local infrastructure to stimulate economic growth. There's a range of projects in there. The first one is a bid project. It's a feasibility study to look into options for traffic calming and pedestrianisation of the Bray at the High Street. It's £3,000. The next one is another bid project for the gathering places and market spaces on Nairn High Street, and it's proposed to allocate £7,000 to that, and that project will help develop tree areas, shrubbery areas, and sort of seating areas in the High Street, and just to make the High Street a better place, a nicer place to linger and spend time. The next project is one that's being led by Nairn Improvement Community Enterprise, and it's a proposal to allocate £5,000 toward a feasibility study an engineer's report into the former social work building on King Street, with a view to potentially developing it into a Nairnshire visitor and experience centre and regeneration hub. Next project is another bid project, That's item D there under that heading. It's Nairn High Street Vennels, and that's a bid project. They're looking for £7,000 to basically strip, repaint and refresh the Vennels again to improve the high street, make it a nicer place to linger. And that project would be carried out very much in partnership with businesses, residents in that area and owners of the Vennels. The next project is in relation to the Nairnshire Farmers Showfield, and it's proposed that we allocate £3,000 to the Nairn Bowling Club towards the cost of their feasibility study into a relocation to the former Showfield ground or part of it. And the last project there is it's a partnership project, although it will be led by myself as ward manager, into a feasibility study into the future use of the Harbour Street toilets and also motorhome provision in and around the Maggot Links area in Nairn. Worth mentioning, members, also that any projects that are listed there that are delivered or led on by third sector or any other external partners, those, if it's approved today, those projects will be subject to further application and governance in due course. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair, on any of those projects in that report.
Okay, anyone got any questions? No, quite happy, Peter. Liz, happy with?
Yes, I was just going to...
Sorry,
go on, Peter.
I was just going to say that we've got quite a good range of projects there, and I think the items that have been selected are going to contribute to the well-being of the town and the people of Nairn. So I'm very much in approving this.
Okay, Liz, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it was along similar lines to Peter, actually. There's been a lot of work has gone into bringing this paper forward from across the agencies and the community planning partnership. So great to see all this joint working going on in the town and hopefully delivering some of these projects over the next year.
Yes, I'm sure it'll be a great improvement for the town. We'll see what the incoming committee makes of it, though. So is it just, do you wish just to confirm the recommendations on 2.1 and 2.2? All right, Lewis?
Thanks, Chair. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we're happy to do that, confirm those recommendations. Okay, thank you. Item number 6, and this is, I believe, Alison, I believe, is Clark here speaking to this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So good morning, members. The paper in front of you sets out proposals for the allocation of the place-based investment programme funds for Nairn. The total funds for allocation are 78,728. There have been 7 applications received. These are each summarised in the report and the details are provided in Appendix 2. There are 4 key criteria for the place-based investment programme funding, which the applications have been assessed against. Is the project funding for capital works? Does the project meet the PBIP objectives? Is the project ready to commence by the 31st of March? And does it align with the community partnership objectives? A matrix reviewing each of the criteria set out in Appendix 1. Now, before I summarise the overall assessment and the proposed options for you to consider, I'm going to hand over to Lewis Hannah, who's going to give a brief verbal update on whether the projects align with the objectives of the community partnership, which is indicated in Appendix 1. Lewis, thank you.
Thanks, Alison. And thanks, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that all 4 projects that are recommended for funding in this paper, they do fit within the objectives of the Places and Spaces subgroup of the Nairnshire Partnership through the improvements that they will bring, that each of the projects will bring to the outdoor spaces, sports ground and associated facilities in the area. So yeah, they very much fit within the objectives of the partnership.
That's great. Thank you very much, Lewis. So members, the summary table at section 8.1 sets out the position for each of the applications and whether they are recommended for approval. The first 3 projects highlighted in green, that is the Nairn Sports Club bounce back, floodlights upgrade and the disabled toilet renovation, have all had their funding in place. They meet the objectives and they are ready to commence by the 31st of March. They are therefore considered to be suitable to approve. Team Hamish Links Regeneration Phase 2 is marked in orange. This project meets the funding criteria and the funding is all in place. However, further development work is required to take forward and therefore they're not ready to fully commit by the 31st of March. The final 3 projects are all marked in red. That's the Fortnighty Hall, and the project does meet the objectives, but not all funding is in place, and therefore they're not ready to commit by the 31st of March. Net Zero Nairn at the Siemens Hall. This project also meets the objectives, but the feasibility study is still under development, and until this is known, the full costs won't be known. So it therefore doesn't have all funding in place and is therefore unable to commit before the 31st of March. Net Zero Nairn with Seavolution. This project is not eligible for this type of funding as it's a revenue-based project and only capital projects are eligible. So based upon this assessment, 4 projects are recommended for progressing, and there are 2 options for you to consider, members. Option 1 proposes to fully fund NSC bounce back, floodlights upgrade and the disabled toilet renovation that are all ready to progress immediately. The remaining 34,234 would be awarded to Team Hamish, the Nairn Links Regeneration Phase 2, and that recognises that further development of the project is required, with a suggestion that the applicant is encouraged to resubmit in 2022-23 when a further PBI grant will be available. Now, informal discussions with the applicant would suggest that the project would still be able to progress if this option was considered, members. Option 2 in the paper would apply a pro rata reduction of all 4 projects. However, as outlined in the report, there is a risk that that would create funding gaps in every project, and either the funding gaps would need to be filled immediately or in order to contractually commit, or applicants would need to reduce the scope of the works in their proposals. So with these 2 approaches in mind, members, the recommendation is at 2.1. You're asked to consider the application submitted and agree which of the projects are to be offered place-based funding and programme grant, and the value of the funds to be offered is up to a total of 78,728. Members, I will do my best to answer any questions in Alan's absence. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor MacDonald, question. No, you're still mute.
Thank you. I didn't actually have a question. I was quite pleased with the applications that have come forward, and I would be minded to go with option 1 because I imagine there's a lot of scope within the Team Hamish to do additional fundraising, and I'd hate to jeopardise the other projects that are already ready to go. So my proposal would be that we just agree option 1.
Councillor Saggers? No.
Laurie, because I've got an interest in this one,
sorry,
you've
sit
out.
You're sitting out, sorry. No, I tend to agree with Liz. I think we should just go with it and support it. Yeah. Very happy with that. Now this will have to go, as I believe, is a starred item to the full council. It's just for confirmation because we haven't got a quorum to.
That's correct, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Item 7, Common Good Fund. Common Good Fund audit accounts 2021, quarter 3 monitoring report, general update, and 22-23 budget. I've got it here. Are you taking us through this one, Lewis?
Yep, I'm happy to talk through this report, Chair. Thank you. Hi, members. So this report presents the audited statement of accounts for 2021 for the Nairn Common Good Fund. An overall revenue surplus of 147,000 was achieved, and this was used to fund expenditure on projects with the balance of the surplus being added to reserves. The report also presents the expenditure monitoring position for our Common Good Fund as at 31st of December 2020 at quarter 3, and the projected year-end position for 21-22. The paper further sets out our proposed revenue budget for the fund for next financial year 22-23. And the paper contains a range of recommendations for members to consider and agree. Firstly, consider and agree that the Nairn Common Good Fund statement of accounts for 2021 and the final 21-22 monitoring statement. Consider and discuss the position of the Nairn Common Good Fund and the 21-22 outturn, as shown in quarter 3. Agree our Common Good Fund budget for 22-23, which is detailed in the report at Appendix 4. And as part of the 22-23 budget, agree a delegated property maintenance budget with an expenditure authority level of £300 per item. Within that proposed Common Good Fund budget for 22-23, members, I would like to ask you to note that we have included specific budget provision in 22-23 for a few Common Good Fund projects which are set out in Appendix 4, and that's in the last page of your papers. And I'll just draw your attention to 3 budget lines that we've included there. There's a £15,000 line in the budget next year for project costs near Common Good Fund, and that'll be predominantly for links development projects. A £12,000 budget line for near Common Good Fund play parks, and that's at the Riverside. And also a £5,000 budget line for the demolition and removal of the former Links store, which, as you know, is an ongoing piece of work. So that's the summary, that's the paper in summary. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, members, any questions? No, Peter, go ahead.
Lewis, can you confirm that in the budget for 22-23 there is a figure for the income from the Common Good car parks?
Yes, that's just looking through it now. It's certainly been factored into the budget when I've been in discussion with finance colleagues. So yeah, that should be in there. I think it features within miscellaneous income.
Right. I suggest in that case it's probably on the low side, judging by what we've taken in.
I'll maybe invite my finance colleague Lara to join us and maybe pick that question up.
Yes, it is included in the £12,000 investment income and predominantly miscellaneous income, sorry, and that is predominantly the car parking income at 12,000. The 125 is just for miscellaneous little lets. I think we based it on the 12,000, given that the estimated outturn for the year that we're currently in is round about 11, I think, will be from car parking. So it may be that it is a bit on the light side.
Good, that's fine. Thank you.
Anybody else? My only sort of query was where you've gone to resources and you've got Harbour Street toilets. Now, my understanding is we're going to get a, what do you call it when they hand them over? Are we not going to get some improvements or renovations from the council for that, to bring it up to a standard that we would accept it back into the common good?
That is going to figure within the works that we're going to carry out. We're going to look into a feasibility study, as in that previous report that I reported on just a moment ago. One of the projects that we're going to use place-based investment funds money for is a feasibility study into the future use. And some of the money that's been set aside will be used for the sort of initial recommissioning or any improvement works that are carried out, depending on the outcome of that feasibility study. So that's very much going to be led by the outcome of the feasibility study into future use. And there'll be a report brought back to committee chair to set out the terms of that feasibility study or the scope of it.
Yes, but I thought there was an issue involving dilapidations of the toilets, that when they were handed back, there was going to be a surveyor to report to get the toilets up to a handover standard or a hand back standard. We would either get a car settlement or they would actually do the work themselves.
Yep, discussions are ongoing with property colleagues about a contribution toward the cost of future works to the toilet block, depending on what we do with it. That will take account of that, because yes, there was a survey carried out which identified the works that would need to be carried out to bring the toilet block back into use. So yeah, so there will be a contribution to the cost of the feasibility study that will reflect that.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else got questions? So we're just going to we'll consider the report. We discussed it. Are we agreeing the budget? Yeah, agreed the budget. Agree a delegated property maintenance budget with expenditure authority of £300. It's fine with me, yes. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. Item 7, we're all happy with item 7? And that's it, I think. Is that our meeting concluded then? So it just leaves me to thank everybody for participating, for the, the help. It was done. Thank you, Lewis. And I wish members well in your retirement. Unfortunately, we should normally have a sort of, well, a cup of tea and a sandwich to say goodbye to each other, but we just can't do that under the circumstances. So I think we'll just call it a day, and the meeting is now closed.